The dust kicked up around Beatrice Vaughn's boots as she walked down the main street of Fort Collins, Colorado, and she could already feel the stairs burning into her back like hot coals pressed against skin. At 6 feet and 2 inches tall, she towered over most men in town and every single woman she had ever met. It was 1878, and in this unforgiving territory, being different meant being a target for ridicule and isolation. "Good Lord, would you look at that, Mrs. Henderson muttered loudly to her companion outside the general store. "That Vaughn girl gets taller every time I see her. Unnatural, that is what it is." Beatrice kept her eyes forward, her jaw tight, her hands clenched at her sides. She had learned long ago that responding only made things worse. The daughter of a rancher who had died 3 years prior, she now ran the small horse breeding operation on the outskirts of town with her younger brother Thomas, who was 17 and still growing himself, though he had yet to reach her height. The general store clerk, Mr. Patterson, barely concealed his discomfort when she entered. "Miss Vaughn," he said curtly, his eyes fixed somewhere around her shoulder rather than meeting her gaze directly. "I need supplies," Beatrice said, keeping her voice steady and businesslike. "Flour, sugar, coffee, and salt. Also some ammunition for the Winchester." "I suppose you can reach the top shelves without any help," Mr. Patterson said, and though his words could have been neutral, his tone dripped with mockery. A young woman near the fabric counter giggled behind her hand, whispering to another. Beatrice caught the words freakish, and never find a husband before she forced herself to tune them out. She completed her transaction in silence, paid with the coins she had earned from selling 2 horses the previous week, and gathered her packages. As she turned to leave, she nearly collided with a man entering the store. She stepped back quickly, accustomed to making herself smaller despite her size, but he did not flinch or recoil. "Pardon me, miss," he said, tipping his hat. His voice was deep and calm with a slight drawl that suggested he came from further south. When Beatrice looked up, which she rarely had to do with anyone, she found herself meeting eyes that were almost level with her own. The man was massive, easily 6 feet 5 inches, with broad shoulders that filled the doorway and a rugged face weathered by sun and hard work. "No harm done," Beatrice said quickly, trying to slip past him. "Let me help you with those packages," he offered, reaching for the heavy bags she carried. "I can manage," she replied automatically. "I am sure you can," he said with a slight smile that reached his eyes. "But that does not mean you should have to." Something in his tone, the genuine kindness without a trace of mockery, made Beatrice pause. She allowed him to take the heavier bags, and together they walked out into the bright Colorado sunshine. "I am Ryder Vaughn," he said as they reached her wagon. "Just arrived in town yesterday. I am the new foreman at the Triple Creek Ranch." Beatrice's eyebrows rose. "Vaughn? That is my surname as well. Is that so? Well, I suppose we might be distant relations, though Vaughn is not such an uncommon name." He loaded her supplies into the wagon with easy strength. "And you are Beatrice Vaughn. I run a horse breeding operation north of town." "A horse breeder," Ryder said, his interest clearly genuine. "That is fine work. What breeds?" "Mostly quarter horses, some Mustang crossbreeds." "Good working animals, sturdy and reliable." Beatrice found herself relaxing slightly as they talked about horses, a subject she knew intimately and loved deeply. "I would like to see your operation sometime, if you would not mind," Ryder said. "The Triple Creek is looking to expand their herd, and I prefer to deal with local breeders when possible." Before Beatrice could respond, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Well, if it is not the giant girl and the giant man, what a pair you make. Perhaps you should join the circus together." Beatrice's face flushed hot with shame as she turned to see Samuel Morton, the banker's son, standing with two of his friends. All three young men wore expensive clothes and expressions of cruel amusement. "Move along," Ryder said, his voice dropping to a tone that held clear warning. "Or what?" Samuel challenged, puffing up his chest despite being a good 6 inches shorter than Ryder. "You are new here, stranger. You do not know about our local oddities. This woman is a freak of nature. No man in his right mind would want anything to do with her." Ryder's jaw tightened, but his voice remained controlled. "The only oddity I see here is a group of small men trying to make themselves feel bigger by cutting others down. I suggest you find something better to do with your time." Samuel's face reddened, but before he could respond, Ryder took a step forward. It was not an aggressive movement, but the sheer size of him made Samuel and his friends instinctively back up. "Miss Vaughn and I were having a pleasant conversation," Ryder continued, "and I do not appreciate the interruption. Now, unless you have business here, I suggest you move along before I decide to mention this encounter to your father at the bank. I met him yesterday, actually. He seemed like a reasonable man. I wonder what he would think of his son harassing a respectable businesswoman in the middle of town." Samuel glared, but apparently decided discretion was the wiser course. He and his friends slunk away, muttering among themselves but not loud enough for their words to carry back. Beatrice stood frozen, unsure how to process what had just happened. Men did not defend her. They either mocked her themselves or stood by while others did. "I apologize for that," Ryder said, turning back to her as if nothing unusual had occurred. "Some people were clearly not raised properly." "You did not have to do that," Beatrice said quietly. "Do what?" "Tell the truth." Ryder smiled again, that same genuine expression that seemed to light his entire face. "Miss Vaughn, I have spent my entire life being too large for most spaces, bumping my head on doorframes and having people either fear me or try to prove themselves against me. I know what it is like to be different, but I also learned that being different is not the same as being less than. You carry yourself with dignity and you run your own business. Those are admirable qualities, regardless of height." Beatrice felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest, something warm and hopeful that she had tried to bury years ago. "Thank you," she managed. "Now, about visiting your ranch," Ryder said, his tone returning to business but his eyes still kind. "Would tomorrow afternoon be convenient? I have the day free, and I genuinely am interested in seeing what stock you have available." "Tomorrow would be fine," Beatrice agreed, giving him directions to her property. As she drove her wagon home, Beatrice could not stop thinking about Ryder Vaughn. It was not just his size, though that certainly made him stand out. It was the way he had treated her, as if her height was simply a fact rather than a flaw. As if she was just another person rather than something to mock or pity. When she arrived home, Thomas was working with one of the young horses in the corral. At 17, he had shot up to 6 feet tall in the past year, and their mother had always said the Vaughn family tended toward height. Their father had been 6'1", respectable but not unusual. Beatrice had inherited height from both sides, her mother's family also known for tall women, but she had exceeded everyone's expectations. "How was town?" Thomas called, wiping sweat from his forehead. "The usual," Beatrice said, then paused. "Actually, something different happened." She told him about Ryder as they unloaded the supplies together, and Thomas listened with interest. "So he is coming tomorrow to look at the horses?" Thomas asked. "Should I make myself scarce?" "Why would you do that? Come on. A man that tall who defended you and wants to visit. He is clearly interested in more than just horses." "Do not be ridiculous," Beatrice said, but her cheeks warmed. "He is new in town and needs stock for the Triple Creek Ranch. It is business." Thomas gave her a knowing look but did not argue further. Well, either way, we should make sure the best horses are in the front corral. The bay mare and that 3-year-old gelding would catch any horseman's eye. That night, Beatrice found herself taking extra care with her appearance, then felt foolish for doing so. She brushed out her long, dark hair, which she typically kept in a simple braid, and even considered wearing her Sunday dress before deciding that was too obvious. She settled on her cleanest work clothes, practical but presentable. When Ryder arrived the next afternoon, riding a handsome roan stallion, Beatrice was working with a young mare in the training pen. She saw him approach and forced herself to finish the exercise she had started rather than rushing over immediately. "Do not let me interrupt," Ryder called, settling against the fence to watch. Beatrice guided the mare through several more movements, demonstrating the animal's responsiveness and even temperament. When she was satisfied, she released the mare and walked over to where Ryder stood. "That is fine work," he said appreciatively. "She is well trained without being broken in spirit. That is a rare skill." "My father taught me," Beatrice said, pride evident in her voice. "He always said a horse with spirit retained is worth 3 horses with spirit broken." A wise man. Ryder climbed over the fence with easy grace despite his size. "May I look at the rest of your stock?" They spent the next 2 hours walking the property, and Beatrice found herself talking more freely than she had with anyone outside her family in years. Ryder asked intelligent questions, showed genuine appreciation for the quality of her horses, and never once made her feel self-conscious about her height. In fact, when they walked side by side, she realized with a strange thrill that they matched stride naturally, both having long legs that covered ground quickly. "You have built something impressive here," Ryder said as they returned to the main barn. "Your father would be proud." "I hope so," Beatrice said softly. "He died 3 years ago, pneumonia. It hit fast and he was gone within a week. I am sorry for your loss." Ryder's sympathy was genuine, not the empty platitudes she had heard so often. Losing a parent is never easy, regardless of how it happens. "Did you lose yours?" "My father died in the war," Ryder said. "I was just a boy. My mother passed 5 years ago. It is part of why I keep moving, I suppose. No roots to hold me anywhere in particular." "Fort Collins is a decent enough place," Beatrice said. "If you can ignore the small-minded gossips." "Every town has those," Ryder said with a slight smile. "I have learned to pay them no mind. Life is too short to worry about the opinions of people who do not matter." "That is easier said than done." "It is," he agreed. "But it gets easier with practice. And sometimes, having one person who sees you truly is worth more than the approval of 100 who do not." Their eyes met and held, and Beatrice felt that warm flutter in her chest again. Before she could respond, Thomas emerged from the barn, leading one of the horses. "This is the gelding I told you about," Beatrice said, grateful for the distraction and the chance to calm her racing heart. 3 years old, excellent bloodlines, already well trained for both riding and light ranch work. Ryder examined the horse with a professional eye, checking its legs, teeth, and overall condition. "He is exactly what we need," he finally said. "What is your price?" Beatrice named a fair figure, and Ryder agreed without haggling. "I will need to bring him to the ranch tomorrow if that works for you, and I would like to discuss purchasing 2 more horses within the month once I see how this one works out." "That would be fine," Beatrice said, trying to keep the excitement from her voice. 3 horses sold in a month would be an excellent start to building a relationship with the biggest ranch in the area. "Good." Ryder tipped his hat. "I will return tomorrow morning with payment and a lead rope. In the meantime, I was wondering if you might join me for dinner at the hotel restaurant tomorrow evening. Beatrice's heart skipped. Dinner? Yes. I am new in town and could use pleasant company. And I would enjoy continuing our conversation in a setting where we are not covered in dust and horse hair. His smile was warm and slightly teasing. I look like this most of the time, Beatrice said before she could stop herself. Dust and horse hair are part of the profession. As they are for me, Ryder said. But occasionally it is nice to clean up and have a good meal. What do you say? Beatrice wanted to say yes immediately, but caution held her back. The hotel restaurant was public, visible. People would see them together, would talk. Then again, people already talked about her. What did it matter if they had something new to gossip about? I would like that, she said finally. Excellent. I will collect you at 6 if that is convenient. After Ryder left, Thomas practically pounced on Beatrice. He asked you to dinner. I told you he was interested. It might just be a friendly meal, Beatrice protested weakly. The man rode out here specifically to ask you. That is not business. That is courting. The word courting made Beatrice's stomach flip. She had long ago resigned herself to spinsterhood, accepting that her unusual height and the isolation of running the ranch meant marriage was unlikely. The few men who had shown interest over the years had either been fortune hunters after her property or men who fetishized her size in ways that made her deeply uncomfortable. But Ryder seemed different. He treated her as an equal, not a curiosity or a prize to be won. The next day passed in a blur of nervous energy. Ryder arrived in the morning as promised, paid in cash, and led the gelding away with professional efficiency. He confirmed their dinner plans, his eyes lighting up when Beatrice agreed again, as if he had been worried she might change her mind. Beatrice spent the afternoon in an agony of indecision over what to wear. She owned 3 dresses suitable for town: a brown everyday dress, a dark blue church dress, and a green dress she had not worn in 2 years because the color made her feel conspicuous. She finally settled on the blue, which fit well through the shoulders and did not make her feel like she was trying too hard. Thomas helped her heat water for a proper bath, and she washed her hair with the lavender soap she saved for special occasions. When she looked at herself in the small mirror above her dresser, she saw the same tall, angular woman she always saw, but perhaps there was something different in her eyes, a spark of hope she had thought long extinguished. Ryder arrived promptly at 6, driving a small buggy borrowed from the ranch. He had cleaned up as well, wearing dark trousers, a pressed white shirt, and a black vest that emphasized his broad shoulders. His dark hair was neatly combed and he had trimmed his beard. "You look lovely," he said simply when Beatrice emerged, and the sincerity in his voice made her believe he meant it. Thomas waved them off with a knowing grin, and Beatrice settled into the buggy seat, acutely aware of Ryder's presence beside her. The ride into town was pleasant, filled with easy conversation about the ranch, the weather, and horses. When they arrived at the hotel, Ryder helped her down from the buggy with one hand, his grip strong and steady. The hotel restaurant was the nicest establishment in Fort Collins, with white tablecloths and glass lamps on every table. When they entered, conversation briefly paused as heads turned to look at them. Beatrice felt the familiar flush of embarrassment creeping up her neck, but Ryder seemed completely unbothered. He kept his hand lightly at the small of her back, a gesture that was both protective and respectful as he guided her to a table. "Mr. Vaughn, Miss Vaughn, welcome," the maitre d' said, his professional smile not quite hiding his curiosity. They were seated at a table near the window, and Beatrice was grateful that at least they were not the center of attention there. "This is nice," Beatrice said, looking around. She had only eaten here once before, years ago with her father after closing a particularly good business deal. I thought so, Ryder agreed. Though I admit, I have been in so many towns that hotel restaurants all start to blend together after a while. You have moved around a lot. More than I probably should have, Ryder admitted. After my mother died, I sold the family property in Texas and decided to see more of the country. I have worked ranches in New Mexico, Wyoming, even spent a season in Montana. Good work and good land, but nothing felt quite right. What brought you to Colorado, honestly? I am not entirely sure. I heard the Triple Creek was looking for a foreman and something about the position appealed to me. I think maybe I am tired of drifting. I am 30 years old. It might be time to put down roots somewhere. They ordered dinner, and the food when it came was excellent. Roast beef with potatoes and carrots, fresh bread with butter, and apple pie for dessert. As they ate, they talked about everything and nothing. Ryder told her stories from his travels, describing the vast Montana sky and the painted deserts of New Mexico. Beatrice found herself sharing memories of her childhood, helping her father with the horses, learning to read the land and the weather. You ever wish you had chosen a different path? Ryder asked. Running a ranch is hard work, especially for a woman alone. I am not alone, I have Thomas. And no, I cannot imagine doing anything else. The horses are my life. They do not care how tall I am or what people say about me. They respond to skill and patience and kindness. In that way, they are better than most people. I cannot argue with that logic, Ryder said with a smile, though I would say some people are worth the trouble. Are you worth the trouble, Mr. Vaughn? I suppose that depends on your definition of trouble. His eyes held hers, and something passed between them, an understanding that this dinner was about more than just friendly conversation. They were interrupted by a sharp laugh from across the room. Beatrice glanced over to see Samuel Morton with a group of his friends, clearly having enjoyed several drinks. When Samuel caught her eye, he raised his glass in a mocking salute. "Ignore him," Ryder said quietly. "That is easy for you to say. You have only been here a few days. You do not know what it is like to live with constant mockery." "You are right. I do not know what it has been like for you specifically," Ryder said carefully. "But I do know what it is like to be different, to have people make assumptions about you based on your appearance. I know what it is like to walk into a room and have everyone go quiet, to see mothers pull their children closer as if size alone makes a man dangerous. I have had men start fights with me in saloons just to prove they are not afraid of the big man. I have had women look at me as if I am some kind of beast rather than a person." Beatrice had not considered this perspective. She had been so focused on her own struggles that she had not thought about what challenges Ryder might face. "I am sorry," she said softly. "That must be difficult." "It was, when I was younger. It made me angry and bitter for a time, but I realized that anger was only hurting me. The people who judge based on appearance alone are not worth my energy. What matters are the people who take the time to see beyond the surface." "And do you think you see beyond my surface?" "I see a woman who is intelligent, capable, and strong," Ryder said. "I see someone who built a business from the ground up, who takes pride in her work, who treats animals with respect and kindness. I see someone worth knowing. Your height is simply one small part of who you are, and frankly, I find it refreshing to be able to look someone in the eye when I talk to them." Beatrice felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back. "You barely know me." "Then let me get to know you better," Ryder said simply. "If you are willing." Before Beatrice could respond, Samuel Morton stumbled over to their table, his friends trailing behind him. He was clearly drunk, his face flushed and his movements unsteady. "The giant girl and the giant man," he slurred. "What a perfect match. You could breed even bigger freaks together. Maybe start your own sideshow." Ryder stood slowly, his size suddenly seeming even more imposing in the enclosed space. "I am going to ask you once nicely to return to your table and leave the lady alone." "The lady?" Samuel laughed. "That is no lady. That is some kind of mistake of nature. Everyone knows it. No normal woman stands that tall. It is not right." "Last warning," Ryder said, his voice deadly calm. "Or what? You will hit me, in front of everyone." Samuel swayed on his feet. "You are all talk, just like she is all height and nothing else." What happened next occurred so quickly that Beatrice almost missed it. Ryder did not throw a punch or make any aggressive move. Instead, he simply placed one large hand on Samuel's shoulder and applied pressure. Samuel's knees buckled, and he found himself being guided firmly but not violently back toward his own table. "Sit down, sober up, and think carefully about your choices," Ryder said quietly but clearly. "Because if I hear of you bothering Miss Vaughn again, you and I will have a much longer conversation, and I promise you will not enjoy it." He released Samuel, who collapsed into his chair with a thump. His friends had gone pale, and no one seemed inclined to continue the confrontation. Ryder returned to their table, his expression apologetic. "I am sorry. I seem to be making a habit of dealing with that particular fool on your behalf." "I should be used to it by now," Beatrice said, though her hands were shaking slightly. "Being used to something does not make it acceptable." Ryder reached across the table and gently took her hand. "You deserve better than this." The warmth of his hand surrounding hers was both comforting and thrilling. Beatrice found herself looking at their joined hands, his so large it made even hers seem small by comparison. "Perhaps we should go," she said quietly. "Only if you want to," Ryder said. "If you want to stay and finish our dinner, we will stay. Do not let small-minded fools drive you out." Beatrice considered this. Part of her wanted to flee to escape the stares and whispers that had started up again. But another part, the part that Ryder seemed to be awakening, wanted to stay, wanted to show everyone that she had as much right to be here as anyone else. "We will stay," she decided. "We have not finished our pie yet." Ryder's smile was proud and warm. "That is the spirit." They finished their dinner in peace, Samuel and his friends having been cowed into silence. The rest of the diners eventually returned to their own conversations, though Beatrice occasionally caught someone glancing their way. As they left the restaurant, Ryder offered his arm and Beatrice took it, feeling the solid strength of him beside her. In the buggy on the way home, they sat closer than they had on the way into town, their shoulders touching companionably. "I had a wonderful evening," Ryder said as they approached Beatrice's ranch. "Despite the interruptions." "So did I," Beatrice admitted. "I cannot remember the last time I enjoyed myself so much in town." "Then we should do it again soon," Ryder said, "if you would like." "I would like that very much." When they reached the house, Ryder helped her down from the buggy, his hand spanning her waist easily. For a moment they stood close, and Beatrice was acutely aware of the warmth of him, the scent of soap and leather and something uniquely him. "Thank you," she said softly, "for defending me, for treating me like a person, for everything." "You do not need to thank me for basic human decency," Ryder said, "though you are welcome all the same." He seemed to hesitate. Then slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away, he leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to her cheek. It was brief and chaste, but it sent warmth flooding through Beatrice's entire body. "Good night, Beatrice," he said, her given name sounding wonderful in his deep voice. "Good night, Ryder." She watched as he drove away, the buggy disappearing into the darkness. Thomas was waiting inside, pretending to read but clearly eager for details. "Well?" he demanded as soon as she entered. "It was nice," Beatrice said, unable to keep the smile from her face. "Just nice. You are glowing. What happened?" She told him about the dinner, about Samuel's interruption and how Ryder had handled it, about the conversations and the connection she felt. "He kissed you?" Thomas asked with a grin on the cheek. "It was perfectly proper." "For now," Thomas said knowingly, "but mark my words, sister, this is just the beginning." Over the following weeks, Ryder became a regular visitor to the ranch. Sometimes he came on business, discussing horses or asking Beatrice's opinion on stock for the Triple Creek. Other times, he came simply to see her, helping with chores or sitting on the porch in the evening, talking about anything and everything. Beatrice found herself looking forward to his visits with an intensity that both thrilled and frightened her. She had protected her heart for so long, built walls to keep out the pain of rejection and mockery. But Ryder seemed to slip past those defenses effortlessly, not by force but by gentle persistence and genuine caring. They went riding together across the open grasslands, their horses well matched in stride as they were. They had dinner in town twice more, and each time Beatrice held her head a little higher, bothered less by the stares and whispers. With Ryder beside her, she felt less like a freak and more like simply a woman courting a man. Because that was what this was, Beatrice finally admitted to herself. Courting. Ryder was courting her, and she was allowing it, even encouraging it. One Sunday, Ryder attended church and sat beside her in the pew. It was a bold statement in a town where seating arrangements were carefully observed and laden with social meaning. After the service, several people approached them, mostly out of curiosity but some with genuine warmth. "Mr. Vaughn, I hear you are doing excellent work at the Triple Creek," Reverend Walsh said, shaking Ryder's hand. "And Miss Vaughn, your horses are the finest in the territory. You should both be proud of what you have built here." It was a small thing, but it meant more to Beatrice than she could express. Public acknowledgement of her work, her worth, while standing beside Ryder. One evening, about 6 weeks after they had met, Ryder stayed late at the ranch helping Thomas repair a section of fence that had been damaged in a storm. The work went long, and darkness had fallen by the time they finished. "Stay for supper," Beatrice insisted. "It is too late to ride back now, and I have a stew cooking." They ate together, the three of them, conversation flowing easily. Thomas had taken to Ryder immediately, grateful to have another man around and someone to help with the heavier work. After supper, Thomas excused himself with obvious deliberateness, claiming he was tired and heading to his small room off the barn. Beatrice and Ryder were left alone in the warm glow of the kitchen lantern. Outside, crickets chirped and the horses whinnied softly in the corral. "Your brother is not subtle," Ryder said with amusement. "No, he is not," Beatrice agreed. "I hope he did not make you uncomfortable." "Not at all. I appreciate him trusting me alone with his sister." Ryder paused, then said more seriously, "Beatrice, I need to tell you something." Her heart clenched. Was this where he told her he was leaving? That this had all been just a pleasant diversion? "I came to Colorado looking for work, looking for a place to settle," Ryder continued. "But I found so much more than that. I found you." Beatrice's breath caught in her throat. "I know we have not known each other long," Ryder said. "But I have never felt this way about anyone before. When I am with you, everything feels right. You are brilliant and strong and beautiful, and I find myself thinking about you constantly. I want to know everything about you. I want to be part of your life if you will have me." Ryder, Beatrice struggled to find words. "I feel the same way, but I need you to understand what you would be taking on. Life with me will not be easy. People will always talk. They will say you settled for less, that you could have done better. They will make cruel jokes about our children if we have them, wondering how tall they will be. I have lived with this mockery my whole life. I do not want that for you." Ryder stood and crossed to where she sat, kneeling beside her chair so their eyes were level. "Beatrice, look at me." She did, meeting his steady gaze. "I do not care what small-minded people say," he told her firmly. "I have spent my life being judged for my size. I am done letting other people's opinions dictate my happiness. You make me happy. You are exactly my size in every way that matters. We fit, you and I. Can you not feel it?" "I can," she whispered. "But I am afraid." "So am I," he admitted. "Caring about someone means risking pain. But I think you are worth that risk. I think what we could have together is worth facing down whatever gossip or prejudice comes our way." He took her hand, cradling it between both of his. "I love you, Beatrice Vaughn. I love your strength and your kindness. I love how you are with the horses, patient and gentle. I love your laugh and the way you think through problems carefully before acting. I love your height and your long stride, and the fact that I do not have to bend down to kiss you." "You have not kissed me yet," Beatrice said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Would you like me to?" Instead of answering with words, Beatrice leaned forward and closed the small distance between them. Their lips met softly at first, tentative, then with growing confidence and passion. It was Beatrice's first real kiss, and it was everything she had dreamed it might be. Ryder's lips were gentle but firm, his hand coming up to cup her cheek with such tenderness it made her heart ache. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing heavily. "I love you too," Beatrice said. "I think I have since that first day when you told Samuel to leave me alone. No one has ever stood up for me like that before." "Then they were all fools," Ryder said. "And I am grateful for their foolishness, because it means I get to be the one who sees you, truly sees you for who you are." They talked late into the night, sitting close together on the porch, planning a future that suddenly seemed bright and full of possibilities. Ryder would continue his work at the Triple Creek for now, but they discussed eventually combining their properties, building something bigger together. "We could have the finest horse breeding operation in Colorado," Ryder said excitedly. "Your knowledge combined with the resources of a larger spread. We could supply ranches across the territory. Our children could grow up learning to ride before they can walk," Beatrice added, then blushed at the presumption. "Our children," Ryder repeated softly, testing the words. "I like the sound of that. Tall, strong children who will know they are loved no matter what." 3 months later, in the small church in Fort Collins, Beatrice Vaughn married Ryder Vaughn in front of a modest gathering of friends and neighbors. She wore a cream-colored dress that her mother had been married in, altered to fit her tall frame. Ryder wore his finest suit, and when he smiled at her as she walked down the aisle, Beatrice felt like the most beautiful woman in the world. Thomas stood up with them as a witness, grinning broadly throughout the ceremony. Even Reverend Walsh seemed genuinely pleased as he pronounced them husband and wife. "You may kiss your bride," he said, and Ryder did, thoroughly and without any concern for propriety, to the point where Thomas had to clear his throat loudly to remind them they had an audience. The reception was held at the ranch, with tables set up outside and food provided by several of the local women who had warmed to Beatrice, once Ryder made his intentions clear. It seemed that having the approval of the well-respected foreman of the Triple Creek Ranch went a long way toward changing public opinion. Samuel Morton did not attend, but his father did, pulling Beatrice aside at one point. "Miss Vaughn, or I suppose it is Mrs. Vaughn now," he said somewhat awkwardly. "I want to apologize for my son's behavior. He has been sent to live with relatives in Denver for a time. I hope he will learn better manners there." "Thank you, Mr. Morton," Beatrice said graciously. "I appreciate you saying so." As the sun set and lanterns were lit, Ryder pulled Beatrice onto the makeshift dance floor. They swayed together to the music of a fiddle and guitar, perfectly matched in height and step. "Happy," Ryder murmured into her hair. Happier than I ever thought possible, Beatrice replied honestly. That night, in the house that was now theirs together, Ryder carried her across the threshold despite her protests that she was too tall and heavy. "You are perfect," he insisted, setting her down gently in what was now their bedroom. "And I intend to spend the rest of my life proving that to you." Their wedding night was tender and passionate. Two people who had waited so long to be truly seen and accepted finally coming together. Beatrice had been nervous, her knowledge of such matters limited to whispered conversations and vague explanations. But Ryder was patient and gentle, making sure she felt safe and loved every moment. Afterward, lying in his arms with her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, Beatrice felt a peace she had never known before. "What are you thinking?" Ryder asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "That I am grateful for every moment of loneliness and mockery I endured," Beatrice said. "Because it all led me here to you. If things had been different, if I had been average height and found some acceptable young man years ago, I would never have known this feeling." "I was thinking something similar," Ryder admitted. "All the moving, all the searching, it was leading me to Colorado, to that general store, to you." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm over the following months. Ryder continued his work at the Triple Creek while helping Beatrice expand her operation in his free time. Thomas thrived with Ryder as a mentor and brother, and the young man's skills with horses grew daily. True to their plans, they began breeding horses more strategically, combining bloodlines to create animals that were both strong and intelligent. Word spread about the quality of Vaughn horses, and soon they had more orders than they could fill. The town gradually accepted their relationship, helped by the fact that they were both hard-working, honest people who caused no trouble. There were still occasional stares and whispered comments, but these bothered Beatrice less and less as time went on. About a year after their wedding, Beatrice realized she was with child. The morning sickness had been going on for 2 weeks before she recognized it for what it was. When she told Ryder, he picked her up and spun her around despite her protests, his face alight with joy. "We are going to be parents," he kept saying, as if he could not quite believe it. "Put me down before you hurt yourself," Beatrice said, but she was laughing. Thomas was equally excited at the prospect of becoming an uncle. "I hope the baby is a boy," he said. "I can teach him to ride." "And if it is a girl?" Beatrice asked. "Then I will teach her to ride," Thomas said with a grin. "Girls need to know how to handle horses just as much as boys." The pregnancy progressed normally, though Beatrice grew larger than most women, carrying the baby high and proud. The local doctor, a practical man named Hayes, was unconcerned. "You are a tall woman married to a tall man," he said bluntly. "Stands to reason you will have a good-sized baby, but you are healthy and strong. I expect you will do just fine." Beatrice worked almost up until the day she went into labor, much to Ryder's consternation. He wanted her to rest and be pampered, but she felt better staying active, and Dr. Hayes agreed that moderate activity was beneficial. When the labor finally began one warm summer evening, it was long and difficult. Beatrice had always been strong, but this tested her limits. Ryder stayed with her throughout, despite the protests of the midwife they had hired to assist Dr. Hayes. "Men do not belong in the birthing room," the midwife said firmly. "This man is staying," Ryder replied just as firmly, holding Beatrice's hand. "She wants me here and I am not leaving." Through the long night, Ryder was a constant presence, wiping her brow, encouraging her, telling her how strong she was. When dawn broke and the baby finally arrived, the thin wail filled the room with joy. "A boy," Dr. Hayes announced, "and a healthy one at that." The baby was indeed large, already over 9 pounds, with dark hair and his father's strong features. When the doctor placed him in Beatrice's arms, she felt a surge of love so powerful it nearly overwhelmed her. "He is perfect," she whispered. "Just like his mother," Ryder said, kissing her forehead gently. "You were amazing." They named him Robert after Ryder's father. Little Robert was a good baby, healthy and happy, and he grew at an astonishing rate. By his first birthday, he was already larger than most 2-year-olds, and it was clear he would inherit his parents' height. "Poor boy," Beatrice said fondly, watching him toddle around the yard. "He's going to face the same challenges we did." "But he will face them with parents who understand," Ryder pointed out. "We will teach him to be proud of who he is, to stand tall in every sense. He will never doubt that he is loved and valued exactly as he is." When Robert was 2, Beatrice became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, perhaps because she knew what to expect. Their second child, a daughter they named Rebecca after Ryder's mother, was born on a snowy December morning. She was as beautiful as her brother, with her mother's dark eyes and a head full of soft brown curls. Life with 2 young children was chaotic but joyful. The ranch prospered, and they eventually bought additional land adjacent to their property. Thomas, now a young man of 21, took on more responsibility, proving himself an excellent horseman and manager. Ryder left his position at the Triple Creek Ranch after Robert was born, choosing instead to focus entirely on building their family business. It was a risk financially, but one that paid off. Within 3 years, Vaughn Ranch was known throughout Colorado and beyond for producing the finest horses in the territory. On Robert's 5th birthday, they held a party at the ranch. Many of the neighbors attended, including families with children who played together happily. Watching her son run around with other kids, already taller than boys 2 years older but accepted and included, made Beatrice's heart swell. "You are crying," Ryder said softly, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Happy tears," Beatrice said, leaning back against him. "I never imagined this life. I never thought I could have this." "You deserve all of this and more," Ryder said. "You are an amazing mother, a brilliant businesswoman, and the love of my life." As the party continued around them, children laughing and adults talking easily, Beatrice reflected on how much had changed in the 7 years since Ryder had walked into the general store. She had gone from a lonely woman convinced she would never be loved to a wife and mother surrounded by family and friends. That evening, after the guests had left and the children were asleep, Beatrice and Ryder sat on the porch as they so often did, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. "Do you ever regret it?" Beatrice asked. "Choosing me, choosing this life. You could have stayed at the Triple Creek, worked your way up to owning a piece of that ranch eventually." "Not for a single moment," Ryder said firmly. "Beatrice, you are my home. Wherever you are, that is where I want to be. These years with you have been the happiest of my life. Even the sleepless nights with colicky babies, even those," he said with a laugh. "Though I admit I will not miss that particular phase." "Good, because I have news," Beatrice said, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have another baby." Ryder's face lit up with joy. "Really? That is wonderful. How long have you known?" "I suspected for a few weeks, but I wanted to be certain before I told you." Dr. Hayes confirmed it yesterday. Their third child, another boy they named Richard, was born healthy and strong 8 months later. With 3 children and a thriving business, life was full and occasionally overwhelming, but Beatrice had never been happier. Thomas eventually married a sweet young woman named Sarah from a neighboring ranch. Their wedding was held at the church, and Beatrice stood up with Sarah, pleased to welcome her into the family. Thomas and Sarah built a house on the far edge of the Vaughn property, and Thomas officially became a partner in the business. Years passed in a blur of growth and change. The children grew tall and strong, just as predicted. Robert reached 6 feet by age 13 and showed no signs of stopping. Rebecca, at 10, was already 5'7". Little Richard was following in his siblings' footsteps. But unlike their mother's experience, the children faced their height with confidence instilled by parents who taught them to be proud of who they were. When Robert came home upset one day because a boy at school had called him a giant, Ryder sat him down for a serious talk. "Some people will always try to make you feel bad about being different," Ryder told his son. "But that says more about them than it does about you. You are strong and kind and intelligent. Your height is just one part of who you are. Never let anyone make you feel less than you are." "But Pa, what if I never fit in?" "Then you will find people who appreciate you for who you are, just like I found your mother. The right people will not care about your height. They will care about your character." As Robert entered his teenage years, he began helping more with the ranch work, proving to have his mother's gift with horses and his father's steady temperament. Rebecca showed an interest in the business side of things, learning to keep books and manage accounts with a skill that impressed everyone. On their 15th wedding anniversary, Ryder planned a special surprise for Beatrice. He arranged for Thomas and Sarah to watch the children for the weekend and took Beatrice to Denver, to a fine hotel where they could have 2 days of peace and luxury. "This is too much," Beatrice protested when she saw the elegant suite he had reserved. "Nothing is too much for you," Ryder insisted. "We work hard every day. We deserve to enjoy the fruits of that labor sometimes." They spent 2 wonderful days exploring the growing city, eating at fine restaurants, and simply enjoying each other's company without the constant demands of children and ranch work. On their last evening, over a candlelit dinner, Ryder presented her with a beautiful necklace, a simple gold chain with a small horse charm. "To remind you of where we started," he said as he fastened it around her neck. "2 people who loved horses and found that they loved each other even more." "I do not need a reminder," Beatrice said, touching the charm gently, "but I love it nonetheless. Thank you, Ryder, for this trip, for this gift, for everything you have given me." "You have given me just as much," Ryder said seriously. "You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. Before I met you, I was drifting, searching for something I could not name. You were what I was searching for all along." They returned home rejuvenated, ready to face the daily challenges of ranch life with renewed energy. The children were growing into remarkable young people, each with their own talents and dreams. When Robert turned 18, he announced his intention to attend agricultural college in Denver, wanting to learn modern ranching techniques to bring back to the family business. "Are you sure?" Beatrice asked, though she was proud of his ambition. "It will be hard being away from home." "I am sure, Ma," Robert said, "but I will come back. This ranch is my future. I just want to make sure I have the knowledge to help it grow." So Robert went off to college, and though the house felt emptier without him, Beatrice was proud of the confident young man he had become. He wrote regularly, sharing what he was learning, and visited during breaks. During his 2nd year, he mentioned meeting a young woman named Grace, the daughter of a rancher from southern Colorado. When he brought her home to meet the family over Christmas break, Beatrice saw immediately that Grace was special. She was of average height, which seemed to matter not at all to either of them. What mattered was the way she looked at Robert with clear love and respect, and the way he treated her with gentleness and devotion. "I am going to marry her, Ma," Robert confided. "After graduation, if she will have me." "She would be a fool not to," Beatrice said, hugging her tall son. "And she does not strike me as a fool. True to his word, Robert proposed the day after his graduation, and Grace accepted. They were married that autumn in a beautiful ceremony that brought joy to everyone who attended. Watching her son stand at the altar with his bride, Beatrice felt the circle completing somehow. Robert would carry on the ranch, raise his own children to be proud of who they were, continue building what she and Ryder had started. Rebecca, now a young woman of 16, had already announced her intention to stay on the ranch as well, taking over the business management side. She had a head for numbers and a sharp business sense that impressed even the hardened cattlemen and horse traders they dealt with. "I could go to school," she told her parents one evening, "but honestly, I am learning more here than I would in a classroom. I know this business inside and out. I want to help build it." "You are sure?" Ryder asked. "We would support whatever you want to do." "I am sure, Pa, this is what I love." Young Richard, at 12, was still figuring out his path, but he showed promise as a horse trainer, with a gentle patience that seemed to calm even the wildest mustangs. As Beatrice approached her 40th birthday, she looked around at the life she had built and felt profound gratitude. The ranch now encompassed over 1,000 acres. They employed several hands and had a reputation that extended far beyond Colorado. Her children were healthy and happy, growing into capable adults. Her brother Thomas and his wife Sarah had 3 children of their own now, and the two families worked together seamlessly. But most importantly, she had Ryder. After 20 years of marriage, she loved him even more than on their wedding day. They had grown together, faced challenges together, built a life together. Every morning she woke up beside him was a gift. On a cool autumn evening, with the aspens turning gold on the mountainsides and the air crisp with the promise of winter, Beatrice and Ryder rode out to a favorite spot on their property, a small hill that overlooked the entire ranch. They had ridden here often over the years to talk, to think, to simply be together away from the bustle of daily life. "You remember that first day?" Beatrice asked as they sat on the grass, horses grazing nearby. "In the general store, every detail," Ryder said. "I remember thinking you were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. Tall and proud, despite the way people were treating you. I remember wanting to know you to understand what made you so strong." "I thought you were too good to be true," Beatrice admitted. "A kind man who did not see my height as a flaw. It seemed impossible." "I never saw it as a flaw. I saw it as part of what makes you extraordinary." Ryder pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder. "You are exactly my size, Beatrice. In every way that matters, you are exactly right for me." Those words, so similar to what he had said all those years ago but deepened by decades of shared life, brought tears to Beatrice's eyes. "I love you," she said simply. "Then, now, always." "And I love you," Ryder replied. More than words can express. As the sun set over the ranch they had built together, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, they sat in comfortable silence. Below them, they could see the house where their children waited, the barns where horses whinnied softly, the corrals and fields that represented years of hard work and dedication. This was home. This was happiness. This was the life that people had once told her she would never have, all because she stood too tall. But she had found a man who saw her truly, who loved her completely, who stood beside her in every sense. Together they had built something beautiful, something lasting. And as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Beatrice Vaughn knew that every hardship, every cruel word, every lonely moment had been worth it. Because they had all led her here, to this hill, to this man, to this life. She was exactly where she was meant to be, with exactly who she was meant to be with. And in the end, that was all that mattered.